Boat That Rocked. New film written and directed by Richard Curtis, who I think it is generally accepted is a better writer than director. The story is about, it's a pop comedy about the heady days of pirate radio, inspired by, but clearly, crucially, not based on the true story of the pirates. I mean, there was a point before the BBC was, had a proper pop station in which it was only broadcasting a very small amount of pop music, so the pirates were operating outside of the law, not breaking the law, but operating outside of the law by broadcasting in, I think it counts as international waters, doesn't it? And Richard Curtis has sort of dreamed up this confection in which what you have is a boat in the period before the pirates were all kind of later. Actually, the thing that really knocked the pirates out was the existence of Radio 1, because once proper pop radio started, and that's, an awful lot of them went there. So what you have is a boat with a bunch of characters on it who are essentially Bill Nye. He's the kind of lanky, louche character who's in charge of everything. You have Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's doing a character who's very much like the Emperor Roscoe. I mean, one of the things I was doing in the movie, which I understand you shouldn't do, but was looking at all the people and trying to match them up with people that you actually knew. There's a character played by Ralph Brown who's clearly sort of slightly Whispering Bob, because he's a late night DJ. And Whispering Bob is still broadcasting. No, absolutely, and clearly Whispering Bob isn't based on the character that's in the boat, because the character in the Boat That Rocked, because is really, really far out there. But his voice, he's the late night one, and he broadcasts like that. And then there's Nick Frost's libidinous Dr. Dave. And the story is at the beginning of the movie, a young boy is put onto the boat because he's been thrown out of school for being involved in drugs, and he goes to see Bill Nye, who's going to set him on the straight and narrow. And Bill Nye says, it's a terrible idea, we do anything but the straight and narrow here. And the rest of the film is a sort of celebration of the anarchic life of all these DJs on this boat, while meanwhile, back on land, Kenneth Branagh is the minister who's trying to close down all the pirate radios, and he's trying to do it with the aid of an assistant. Now, have you seen this film?
No, what do you know?
No, I'm just going to point this out. So, in Blackadder, one of the central jokes in Blackadder, there's a character called Darling, right? Mm-hmm. Darling. So, people say, "Hello, come over here, darling, and we'll do this together, darling," and, you're fine. Key joke in The Boat That Rocked is there is a character whose name is, and I'm going to spell it because I understand it, is TWA double T. Okay. And just for obvious reasons, I'm not going to say it out loud. That is a central gag. Now, I'm going to play you a clip now that involves a meeting between Bill Nighy and that character, in which I believe we've taken out his name. This is when the character...
Even though it's a double T at the end.
It is, but in the end, it doesn't matter which way you spell it, does it? Let's be honest. Here's the clip.
Hello. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. Hello. Got a bit lost.
More than a bit. In order to get here, you have to open a really quite heavy door with the words "no entry" on it.
Well, I didn't see that, so it must have been left open.
You look suspiciously square to be a fan of this boat's output.
No, I'm a real fan.
I hope so, because if word gets out that you're here to spy on us, I think you may have trouble hanging into your testicles.
Are you threatening me?
Do you know, I think I am. Because I've got pretty good instincts in me.
Get out of here!
Now, it comes down an awful lot, whether you like this movie or not, to whether you find the central joke about the character who isn't called Darling funny. Now, you see, you're doing exactly what most of the people in the cinema did. Yeah, you see.
I think the music would have saved it, though, possibly, would it? No,
well, no, but
not.
I did find it funny. Now, here's the funny thing. Dear. Richard Curtis... No, I'm sorry, and I know I'm out of step with this. Richard Curtis, I think... There is no way of saying that Richard Curtis is a great director. I think he's a wonderful screenwriter. I think he's not a brilliant director. His films are very baggy and disorganised. You look at Love Actually...
Which he also wrote and directed.
And it was, crucially, he directed. And it's kind of all over the place, and it rambles all over the place. And in fact, there's an entire subplot that was taken out of it. And when you look at The Boat That Rocked, which is long, it's over 2 hours, and it still looks like there's bits that they've left out. Characters get invoked, they never appear again. Somebody mentions something, it's never followed up. And the thing looks like it's thrown together like a bit of a sort of meringue. It's just grown of its own accord. And I understand that structurally, obviously, what he needs is to sit down in a room with Roger Corman, the famous American producer, who said that no movie would not benefit from losing a quarter of its running time, and that's what it needs. Now, that is true. I also understand that the film is completely fallacious in terms of any sense of reality. I mean, it's a fantasy. It's really not based on anything. Although it doesn't say that it is. I mean, I know they've got in people to act as advisors who really were involved in pirate radio, and so there has been some sort of hint of authenticity, but it's nothing other than a hint. And I also understand that some of the writing, perhaps some people would say, is not Richard Curtis's best. But I sat there in a screening in which it was going down fairly badly, and I have to tell you this. I started laughing, and the first time they said that guy's name, I laughed out loud into the silence of the room. And I was laughing at the movie, and I knew there was things wrong with it. Structurally, it's all over the place, and it's a mess. But I started laughing, and I started smiling. And then a part of me went, hang about a minute. The reason you're laughing and smiling is essentially you like the idea of Richard Curtis. You think Richard Curtis is a genuinely good man, and you like the movie because you like him. So then I did an experiment. I thought, okay, I'm going to imagine that this movie is directed by Guy Ritchie. I'm going to try and look at it as if it's direct. And you know what? It didn't work. I promise you this. I know all the things that are wrong with the film. I know that if you held it up in front of that army full of film students, they'd explain to you structurally this, character-wise that. I can't believe he called that character that. It's got 59 endings and none of them work. None of these things come together. But you know what? I sat there and I grinned, and my face was grinning, and I was feeling good, and I was laughing, and I was enjoying it. And I remembered something, which is that my wife went to America, and she got off the plane. The other, she said,
not the fact she went to America.
No, she said, you know what I did on the plane? She said, I watched Love Actually 3 times back to back. And there's a bit in one of the Nick Hornby novels when he says buying a present for somebody you love is not buying them a record that you like, it's buying them a record that they would like. Like in High Fidelity, she says, when you bought me that Lionel Richie record, that was doing something you want. So I ended up buying Love Actually for Linda. And of course, since then, I've watched it again after having, given it a bit of a kicking for being all over the place. And you know what? It does have genuine wit and charm. And the thing with The Boat That Rocked is, I don't care what's wrong with it. I promise you, I sat there and I really tried to put myself in the position of somebody who actively didn't like the filmmaker, and I couldn't take the smile off my face. And I didn't laugh as much as I've laughed in some of the like, for example, 4 Weddings, but I laughed solidly and consistently enough, and I had a tear in my eye in the right place enough to say, you know what? I liked the film, despite whilst the rational part of my head was going, all these things are wrong, my heart was going, you know what though? I'm going with it.